My name's Oliver Scott and I'm the Artistic Director of Mercurial Dance. We're a dance company. We've been based in Coventry for nearly 15 years now, creating dance works throughout the city, particularly site-specific or working in unusual places. And our work, we've got three strands to what we do. We have our site-specific area, so large-scale events and building takeovers that we produce, co-produce, present and make work for. We have our education and participation work, which over the years has evolved, includes large-scale participatory events with Warwick Arts Centre and others, down to in-depth community change transformation projects that we do throughout the West Midlands. And then we have our small-scale touring works, which we take anywhere, which are kind of usually 2-3 dancers and can go anywhere around the country. So my background as a dancer, I started slightly later into dance. I started dancing when I was 18 and was already doing a biology degree. So I actually qualified in biology, got a degree in biology. And throughout that time I was dancing, nearly dancing part-time in various different courses that I could find alongside my degree. Captivated by it, loved it, wanted to see where I could go and where I could take it. And so came to Coventry back a number of years ago now to train at Coventry Centre for the Performing Arts, which had just become Coventry University, and then continued my training in London, joining small-scale touring theatre companies and working as a performer. I came back up to the Midlands to work for Motion House and toured with them before founding Mercurial Dance and really making a decision to sort of remain in Coventry and in the West Midlands working here. What I've loved about working in the Midlands and why I've sort of stayed here and really being committed to Coventry is that there's a really vibrant independent scene in a way. For many, many years, the beauty of there being slightly less support in terms of agencies managing dance in the city has meant that there's a lot more opportunity to find your own way and develop your own practice in the city. And I think a lot of artists find that. And with that, there's a really positive energy about making things happen. And that's a real driver for me. It's about how, with other people, we can come together to make a change or make a difference or make things happen and make our work. When I first founded my company, I did a piece called 100 Faces, which is a digital dance installation piece. We did it over in the Leamington Gallery and Pump Rooms, and I collaborated with a filmmaker. And we were looking for a place to move out of sort of that working from home into our first office and working space. And we sort of came across the Coventry Canal Basin, which is this beautiful, it's the largest working heritage building in the city, a beautifully restored former canal warehouse, where all of the goods of the city came in. And this has been sort of rebuilt and restored by a group of artists originally, actually, as a collective of different spaces. So we found shared space there, and then gradually we've both, as our practices have changed, I've now got my own office space within the building. And here we've got a collective of graphic designers, artists, visual artists, digital artists. Randomly there's a model train company and there's a canoe group, keep their canoes next to the canal here. And it was sort of founded really as a space really to keep the heritage of the building alive, but also as those first steps 30 years ago as for artists to have their own practice space and making. And so I use it here as our office headquarters. We then use and find dance studio space around the different spaces within the city or elsewhere in the wider West Midlands when we start making work and needing studio practice. But here's where we've had a base now for over 10 years actually, just as a nice stable space for us to be operating from and bringing our teams together to meet and work. Right since early on in my practice as a performer actually, site-specific work or working on sites or in unusual places has always been there. My professional debut was with Dance Umbrella's Genesis Canyon, which was a performance at the Natural History Museum many, many years ago. And it's really run through as a thread with a lot of my work is around making performances for specific places and enlivening them and enabling them. In Coventry, we've hosted and held what we called the Bubble Chamber at the time, which was a series of pop-up art spaces for dance and digital art in empty shops. We were part of the early movement in the city to really reclaim and regenerate part of the city centre square. So we had a shop in City Arcade that we managed for 18 months, and we created a series of performances in there. And then we've sort of moved nomadically, really. Rather than having one, we really value that ability of pop-ups to emerge, do something for the length of time that the space allows, and then go somewhere else. So we've had about 3 or 4 different spaces through the city which we've used as a rehearsal space or a way of creating and making dance for an audience that are at street level. So really finding a way to connect very tangibly with people who are just going about their everyday business in city centre. I suppose in a way I've had an engaged participatory practice that runs through all my work, and that has been, if you like, in collaboration with Warwick Arts Centre. We've created and authored a series of projects over a number of years with them, where we would create a performance with children in schools to then either come to the Arts Centre or perform elsewhere. And so for me, it's sort of, in some ways, it's the conversation with the particular communities that I'm meeting at any one time that I find that my practice starts to shape, if you like. So there's a philosophy around, as dancers, we're all on a journey around how we're learning and what we're learning and how we're using our bodies in the space. And with that, there's always moments where we need to perform and express those. And so there's a sort of there's no really one cut-off line, I think, between when you become a fully professional dancer, in a sense, other than perhaps you're being paid for your work, and there's the same amount of integrity as somebody who's just had less training or less experience in their bodies. And I think there's an interesting spectrum throughout that, around our practice, that we sort of intersect with at different times and find those moments for celebrating people's journeys through dance. For many years, there's been a few of us, not many dance organisations who are making professional work, but a massive amount of organisations in the city who are offering classes and training for young people in dance. And I think it's been quite dispersed across the city, and hopefully the City of Culture will start to able to draw that together. But I think also what's needed within the city, and when we put this forward around the discussions for the strategy for the council around the art strategy in the city, is that movement and how we move and how we relate to our bodies is sort of key to our health and our well-being. It's also key to the ecology, I think, of the city as a city that we move through and we engage within. So I'm hoping that through City of Culture we can articulate maybe a space where some of that, or number of spaces if it's distributed, where dance artists can come together and share their practice. And we initially called that Life in Movement as a concept, really, a concept where wherever you are at your stage in your journeys through life, you're able to find and connect with dance, whether that's really young, early years, family movement, through to perhaps, you know, later years, physical rehabilitation. So sort of trying to take the sense of a person's journey through life in their body, but sort of find a physical space or number of physical spaces that can help and support that around the network. And I think there's a real opportunity with City of Culture to find the resources for that kind of thing, to enable that kind of project or that kind of way of bringing a community in a number of different forms in the city together, and one that will be probably quite revolutionary for the city as well. In Coventry, and having been here for many years working and practicing in the city, there is also a web, if you like, of different people who have come and returned and been inspired by the projects. So, for example, a number of years ago I was involved in the Boys Dancing project with Warwick Arts Centre, which connected with a lot of young men, inspiring young men to dance. Through that project there are young dancers, there's Ashley Jordan, who's one, Ben, another, who came up through that, found their way into Coventry Youth Dance, connected with Highly Sprung, a physical theatre company in the city, have connected and apprenticed with us as sort of 16-year-olds, then gone away and trained, and then moved back to the city to carry on working, and now are sort of at that point of working as a dance artist throughout the West Midlands, but also starting to make their own first steps towards forming their own organisations as well. And so there's sort of something about being based within a community, and when I say community, the dance community is quite small nationally, so within a sort of certain sector of that. So there's a sort of connection of different people, and you start to find out where people go and how people move, and I think that's a part of our knowledge that you have to learn, and it's not really taught, it's something you just find out about. Who you make your best relationships with, who you form your best partnerships with, how they help you to make work come into being. And that sort of really builds as another part of what we do at Mercurial Dance, and what I'm passionate about as well, is that there's a sense of entrepreneurship within the arts that's needed. A way of finding and making your project happening, a way of ensuring that you're connecting and making it relevant to the audiences that you want to talk to, or growing that with the communities and participants you want to be working with. And that practice happens in the studio. It might be a concept that you bring, or find a group that sits or works with, and then develop that with them as you get into the studio with them. But all the time there's this sense of the drive to help make it happen, find the resources to make it happen. And so I'm quite passionate about sort of sharing that entrepreneurial side of what you need to do just to make it work. You need to run a company, form a business, do all the business and product management, or if not, find the right people, the producers, to help you deliver that and do that. And that's something that's been a long journey over a long period of time, growing an organisation from a dance artist who works for others, where I was, to now we employ 40 freelancers across the year on a variety of different projects that span arts, dance, digital, education, and so has quite a broad portfolio of practice. And that's come through the growth of opportunities that have come with us, or conversations, or people we've found partnerships, as well as noticing in the city and the West Midlands as well, because we work across the West Midlands and starting to tour nationally with our work as well, about where what we offer meets somebody else's needs. And then when we can find that, that's when you have projects that really make a deep change.